Jesus tells us today in the gospel passage that he has not come to abolish the law or the prophets, but he has come to fulfill them. And we know Jesus likewise has said that all the commandments are resumed in these two commandments: to love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and all your strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. He says by accomplishing these, we accomplish all the law. And if we think back in the Old Testament, all the prescriptions of the law were there to help people to consecrate their days to God and consecrate each individual part of their day. Whatever they were doing, they were often saying prayers, ablutions, or preparations, or everything was designed to consecrate their days to and their lives to God. And the seasons likewise were consecrated, and different things were done at different seasons, and different offerings, and their products of their land, the fruits of their harvests, and as well as their flocks were all given to God. And also parts of their day were consecrated, and they did different washings or ablutions as well to purify themselves and make themselves holy, but especially with the intention of doing all these things to turn their heart towards God. So Jesus says that really that's all aiming at these commandments, to love God with all our heart and mind and soul and all our strength, and likewise to love our neighbor to ourselves. So when we do these commandments, we accomplish all of the law, and we are consecrating our lives to God. And I think it's good for us to remember as well that we should frequently turn our hearts and minds towards God each day. When we get into the car, we should make a simple prayer to pray for ourselves and pray for the safety of all those who are on the road at that time. When we get to work, we should offer our day and pray for ourselves and the other people in the workplace, that they may work in a safe and efficient way and provide the services they are called to do. And at our meals, we often bless them and give thanks for the food. And then at different moments to turn our hearts and minds towards God when something beautiful happens to us, or if there's a worry or a concern, that we should turn this all to God. And when we turn these things to God and turn our hearts and minds to God, and we consecrate these moments to God, you see how that becomes a continual prayer. Our whole day is brought up in an intentional life that is turned towards God, and that becomes a prayer in itself. I think what happens too often is we are too absorbed by the world. We're so easily absorbed by the world, and it's not necessarily through passion or desire or lust, but maybe it's just by concerns, by perhaps a lack of confidence in God, and we worry and we're preoccupied, and we want to have everything under control. And so we're absorbed by this world, and we forget to turn our hearts and minds to God. We get in our car and we just think right away about the place we're supposed to go, and how quickly we're going to get there, and then we're thinking about the next thing. But we need to stop and step back and say, no, this is a moment here, just to take a moment, a few seconds, and make a prayer to God and say, here, I offer this to you, and I offer my life to you, and protect me and protect all those who are on the road. And so we need to be careful not to be too absorbed by this world, but to have a spirit of faith and confidence in God, and not let our hearts and minds be overly attached to this world, but centered on God. And as our lives become more centered on God, we live in more of a divine zone than a worldly zone, and we enter into that prayer-like state, and little by little our thoughts and minds are absorbed more by God than this world. And you see how that as well becomes a mystical state. That as well becomes a mystical life, where our life is spent more in God than in the world. And little steps lead us to there, and just a simple life, again, the simple life of a childlike life, a childlike wonder and appreciation, a sense of gratitude for the blessings that God has given us, and also a childlike confidence with our difficulties and our worries. But it's all good when we turn it all over to God, and when we turn our lives to God each moment of every day, making our life a continual prayer.